Stop. Before you spend another dollar on supplements or another hour meal prepping, I need to tell you something that's going to sound absolutely insane. I've been researching nutrition and longevity for over 30 years, and I've reviewed thousands of studies. And what I'm about to share goes against everything the health industry wants you to believe. The foods that could add over a decade to your life, the ones backed by millions of participants in clinical studies, aren't organic kale or acai berries. They're not sold at specialty health stores for $20 a bottle. They're 3 dirt-cheap canned foods sitting in the grocery store aisle you probably walk right past. And the science behind them is so overwhelming, it's actually shocking more doctors aren't screaming about this from the rooftops. A massive 2022 study in PLOS Medicine analyzed decades of research and found that switching to an optimal diet could add 10.7 years for women and 13 years for men starting in young adulthood. But here's what stunned even the researchers. People who started this diet at age 60 still added 8 years to their lives. 8 years! That's the difference between meeting your great-grandchildren or not. So what were the absolute champions in this longevity diet? 3 canned foods, and I'm going to count them down from number 3 to the absolute most powerful one. Trust me, you'll want to hear all 3 because when you combine them, the results are almost unbelievable. Number 3, canned tomatoes. Now, before you skip ahead thinking tomatoes are boring, let me blow your mind with something most people have no idea about. Canned tomatoes are scientifically proven to be more nutritious than fresh tomatoes. I'm not making this up. When tomatoes are heated during the canning process, something incredible happens. The lycopene, that powerful antioxidant that gives tomatoes their red color, undergoes a chemical transformation. A study published in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry found that cooking tomatoes increases lycopene bioavailability by 35%. That means your body absorbs 35% more of this cancer-fighting compound from a can than from a fresh tomato in a salad. But here's where it gets really interesting. A 2012 study in the British Journal of Nutrition tracked over 25,000 men for 11 years. Men with the highest lycopene levels in their blood had a 55% lower risk of stroke. 55%! And the easiest, most affordable way to get that lycopene? Canned tomatoes. Another study from Harvard School of Public Health followed 47,000 men and found that those eating tomato products more than twice weekly had a 21 to 34% lower risk of prostate cancer compared to those who rarely ate them. And canned tomato products showed the strongest association because of that enhanced lycopene absorption. Plus, canned tomatoes are a cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet, which study after study links to dramatically reduced rates of heart disease, Alzheimer's, and early death. A 2013 study in the New England Journal of Medicine found that a Mediterranean diet reduced cardiovascular events by 30%. Canned tomatoes make that diet affordable and accessible every single day. Number 2, canned sardines and fatty fish. Okay, I get it. Sardines aren't Instagram-worthy. They're not going to win any beauty contests. But what they will do is potentially save your life. And the research here is absolutely staggering. Harvard Medical School researchers tracked 84,000 women over 16 years. Women who ate fish just once a week had a 29% lower risk of heart disease. But here's the kicker. Those eating fatty fish like sardines 2 to 4 times a week, their risk dropped by 31%, and those eating 5 or more times weekly saw a 34% reduction. A 2021 study published in Clinical Nutrition took 152 seniors with pre-diabetes and had them eat just 200 grams of sardines per week. That's literally 2 small cans. After 1 year, not only did their blood pressure drop significantly, but their HDL cholesterol, that's the good cholesterol, increased. Their triglycerides dropped. Their fasting glucose improved. 2 cans of sardines per week changed multiple markers of metabolic health. Another groundbreaking study examined the omega-3 index, which measures how much omega-3 fatty acids are in your red blood cells. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that people with an omega-3 index below 4% had a 90% higher risk of dying from heart disease compared to those above 8%. Regular sardine consumption can shift you from that high-risk category to the protective zone. And here's something most people don't know. Sardines are one of the few foods that give you the omega-3s, EPA and DHA, the exact forms your brain and heart need, without any conversion required. Plant-based omega-3s have to be converted by your body, and most people only convert about 5%. Sardines deliver the real deal, ready to use. A study in the journal Neurology found that older adults with the highest blood levels of omega-3s, the kind you get from sardines, had brains that appeared 2 years younger on MRI scans. Their brains had better blood flow and better cognitive test scores. We're talking about eating your way to a younger brain. And let's talk about the calcium. Because you eat sardines whole, bones and all, they're loaded with calcium. A single can gives you about 35% of your daily calcium needs, plus vitamin D to help you absorb it. That's a 1-2 punch for bone health that could mean the difference between a broken hip at 80 or still hiking mountains. Number 1, and this is the absolute champion, canned beans and legumes. Black beans, chickpeas, lentils, kidney beans, pinto beans. If there's one food that the science says you should eat almost every single day for a longer life, this is it. The Food Habits in Later Life study, published in 2004, followed elderly people across 5 countries for 7 years. What they found was mind-blowing. For every 20 grams of legumes people ate daily, that's barely 2 tablespoons, their risk of death dropped by 8%. But here's what really shocked the researchers. That 20-gram daily intake was associated with an incredible 7 to 8 year increase in life expectancy. Think about that. 7 to 8 years from less than a quarter cup of beans a day. A 2001 study published in the Archives of Internal Medicine followed 9,600 people for 19 years. Those who ate beans, peas, or peanuts at least 4 times a week had a 22% lower risk of heart disease compared to those eating them less than once a week. 22% from a food that costs pennies per serving. In 2023, researchers published a meta-analysis in the journal Nutrients that pooled data from over 1 million participants across multiple studies. They found that for every 50 grams of legumes, about a quarter cup, consumed daily, there was a 6% reduction in risk of death from any cause. Scale that up, if you eat 1 cup of beans daily, you're looking at a 24% reduction in your risk of dying during the study period. But wait, it gets better. The Blue Zones research, which studied the 5 regions in the world where people live the longest, healthiest lives, found one dietary pattern that showed up in all 5 zones. They all ate about 1 cup of beans every single day. In Sardinia, Italy, it's fava beans and chickpeas. In Okinawa, Japan, it's soybeans. In Loma Linda, California, it's a variety of beans. In Nicoya, Costa Rica, it's black beans. These aren't people living to 75 or 80. These are people regularly hitting 100 years old, and they're active and sharp. A study in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition found that people who eat beans regularly have 23% lower rates of obesity, even when eating the same number of calories as non-bean eaters. Beans keep you full, stabilize blood sugar, and prevent the weight gain that's associated with so many chronic diseases. And here's the part that addresses one of the biggest killers as we age: inflammation. Chronic inflammation is linked to heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, you name it. A 2016 study found that people who ate legumes 4 or more times per week had a 22% lower level of C-reactive protein, a key marker of inflammation, compared to those eating them less than once a week. Beans are also incredibly high in fiber. 1 cup gives you about 15 grams. That's half of your daily needs. A study published in JAMA Internal Medicine analyzed data from nearly 300,000 people and found that those with the highest fiber intake had a 23% lower risk of dying from any cause compared to those with the lowest intake. And beans are one of the easiest, cheapest ways to get that fiber. Plus, beans are loaded with folate, magnesium, potassium, and resistant starch. Resistant starch feeds the good bacteria in your gut, and we now know that gut health is linked to everything from immune function to mental health to how well you age. So here's your no-nonsense action plan, and I want you to start this week, not next month. Stock your pantry with these 3 canned foods. They're cheap, they last forever, and the science says they could literally add a decade to your life. Add beans to at least 4 meals a week. Toss them in soups, make bean salads, blend them into dips, add them to tacos. It doesn't have to be complicated. Eat sardines or canned salmon twice a week. Mash them on whole grain toast, toss them in a salad, mix them with pasta. Make that the foundation instead of cream or butter. These aren't trendy superfoods that'll be debunked next year. These are foods backed by decades of research, millions of study participants, and the longest living populations on Earth. You're not gambling on a fad, you're following the science. And here's what nobody talks about. This isn't about adding years of sitting in a nursing home. The studies show these foods add healthy years, active years, years where you're still traveling, still playing with grandkids, still doing what you love. The difference between 85 and 95 could be watching your family grow for another decade. It could be that trip you always wanted to take. It could be finally writing that book or learning that language. And it might just come down to 3 cans sitting on a shelf.